Hey gang, I'm here with my 335 because I figure if I brought a Fender, maybe nobody would think that I really knew what I was talking about when it comes to modes and all that kind of stuff. 335, oh man, the guy must know what he's talking about a little bit. Maybe it's a little jazzy. I don't know. Anyway, what I wanted to share with you, who cares? What I wanted to share with you is there's tons of stuff out there about modes, but I think a lot of it is pretty confusing. I want to show you something that I have always found kind of practical, and it works for me. Okay? I'm not saying it's everything about modes. I'm not saying it's the key to understanding modes. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is that it helped me, and it helps me in a practical sense to play. Okay? So, what I always found difficult about modes was actually figuring out sort of what they all were and how did I use them, right? So I learned that the modes were like based upon a major scale, and the first degree was Ionian. I have to look it up because, you know, honestly, I don't always remember the Greek names. Who cares, really? So the first one was Ionian, and the second degree was Dorian. Ooh, I remember I could use Dorian. That was a pretty good one. Third one was Phrygian or Phrygian. What does that sound like? I don't know. The fourth one was Lydian, you know, like the tattooed lady in the Marx Brothers. Lydia, I guess. The fifth one is Mixolydian. The sixth one is Aeolian. The seventh one is Locrian. And those are the different degrees. And I did know that something like the Locrian sounded a little bit wrong, but I had no idea why. Okay? And I didn't know how to use them. So I just kind of put them in the garbage or in the dustbin or whatever. I eventually figured it out, and I figured it out based on chords in the guitar. So I'm going to show you at least my view of how this all works. Okay, so I want to show it to you in terms of a chart. Okay, I'm going to put down the guitar. I'm going to show it to you in terms of a chart. Now, the first chart I want to show you is this one. And hopefully you can read it. I should have put it on the computer. However, basically what I wanted to do is I want to map things to three different areas. On this end we've got happy or sweet. In the middle we've got kind of tough or bluesy, I might say. And on the right hand side I've got weird or bizarre on the far end. Okay? And what I found most useful is in using modes to kind of navigate how a sound that I get is either happy or sweet, or tough or bluesy. Those are the two most useful. This is kind of more for jazz and playing out, if you will, you know, playing out of the pocket. And it does work, and I'll show you how it works. But these are the most useful, okay? And you can see, at least the way that I'm thinking about it, is on this end, we've got our major sounding things, right? So major pentatonics, many of you are familiar with pentatonics, and that lines up with the Ionian mode, okay? As we move toward the toughness scale, we have these more of a bluesy sound, and that kind of goes up with my minor pentatonic scale. And as I move toward there, I go from Ionian. If I want to sound a little bit tougher than Ionian, I use Mixolydian. If I want it even more tough, I use Dorian mode, and if I want it toughest, I use my minor scale, or the Aeolian. That's just the relative minor. Now let's give an example. The example that I've got up here is in A. So as I move from A to sort of let's just do it from the sweet to the bluesy, okay? Or you can think of it as kind of country to blues, okay? Or maybe B.B. King to Albert King is another way of thinking about it, right? Okay, because B.B. King's kind of the sweet side of the blues, Albert King kind of the tougher side of the blues. Make sense? Hopefully it does. Okay, if we do that in A, and I'll show you again how this works on the guitar and why it makes sense, you're going to move from A to D is the Mixolydian mode, to G and then to C. And I think of this as removing sharps. If I think of raising things, I make it sweeter. If I think of lowering things, adding flats, I think of making it more sour or tough. So going from the key of A to the key of D, you have to flat one note. And from going D to C, you have to flatten another note. And from going G to C, D to G, you have to flat one note. And if you go from G to C, you have to flat one more note. Now let's see how this sounds on the guitar, and I'll show it to you, why it sounds this way. Okay, but remember this chart. I haven't seen this chart anywhere, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm going to put it away. We'll have occasion to look at another chart, but let me just show you how it works. Okay, so if I have an A, remember I'm going to be playing over an A chord. If I have an A chord and I want a sweet sound, I'll play a major scale. So if I know the major scale over an A chord, and that sounds kind of sweet, pretty. I can play it in different positions too. Okay, so there's lots of different places I can play that A. Okay, for now we'll just kind of keep it right around the 5th position and see how everything sounds. Okay, now part of the toughness sound is sort of, you can imagine, instead of adding that chord, I might kind of add a 7th sound. That toughens it just a tiny bit, right? It's not quite as sweet, right? So what I can do is flat the 7th, and in fact, that gives me if I flat the 7th in an A major scale, I end up getting a D. Now it'll turn out you don't have to memorize this. We're going to learn it in terms of how everything is located on the guitar, which is really cool. But right now, just file that away. So if I flat the 7th of that major scale, instead of going like this, I'll flat, instead of that note, I'll play that. So listen to the difference. Here's the major, and here's the flatted 7th. Just a little bit. That happens to be all the notes of a D major scale. So I can play a D major scale anywhere I want along the neck, and I'll be in a mixolydian mode. So if I learn my major scales all the way up and down the neck by using something called the cage system, or any system that you use for learning major scales, you'll be able to get it. All you have to know are the major scales, and you can automatically play all the modes, and you know the colors of the modes as well. So, all that's mixolydian mode in an A chord. Okay, now if I want to make it a little bit tougher, again, on my scale here, I'm going to move from the Ionian to the mixolydian. A little bit tougher still, I move to the Dorian. Okay, so the Dorian, I add one more flat to D, and that puts me in the key of G. So if I play a G position, I'll end up with a Dorian mode in A. I play an A. Played a few sour notes. Okay, and you'll notice that one, if you know your minor pentatonics, you'll notice that it lines up perfectly with it. All those notes are in a minor pentatonic. You just have a few more notes to play with. So the Dorian mode sounds a lot like minor pentatonic, but not quite. If I want to make it tougher still, I go to what's called the Aeolian mode, and I go from one more I add one more flat to G, and I go from a G to a C. Okay, so a C major scale. All of those line up. So if I play a C major scale, it sounds like this. I mean an A. I'll start from A and go to A. Oops, but I'm playing an A major. So as we go from sort of a majory sound to a minor sound, we can think of modes playing as between all of those colors. And here's an example of playing we said that G was a Dorian, was the Dorian mode for this guy. Listen to for an A chord, listen to, if I play up here and play in this G position, see how bluesy it sounds. Sounds pretty bluesy, right? But I was playing Dorian mode. So, and it sounds kind of tough. Likewise, Mixolydian, check it out how that sounds if I'm playing it. Not quite as bluesy, but kind of neat. Play up in this position. Okay? So that's how all that works. Now, how do I figure it out? That's the tough part, but it's actually made a lot easier by either two diagrams. One is either this thinking of it in terms of the cycle of fifths, which I'm going to show you in just a second, or in terms of just the way that you do chords. I'll show you the cycle of fifths first, and then we'll just connect it with the fretboard and chords, and I think you'll be in really good shape on this. So the first thing is with cycle of fifths. So with a cycle of fifths, every time you go backwards, every time you go counterclockwise, we add flats, and every time we go clockwise, we add sharps. So for example, if we start with C and we add a sharp, we end up with G. If we add another sharp, we end up with D. Another sharp, we end up with A, and so forth, right? So A would be literally 3 sharps. 1, 2, 3. Now, if we go, don't worry about what those sharps are. Just remember that there are 3. On top center, no sharps, no flats. Okay. Now, on this one, as we start from A, which was our example, didn't I say, hey, if I go to D, I get my Mixolydian mode. If I go to G, I get my Dorian mode. And if I go to C, I get my Aeolian mode. Or to put it in a different way, I think a more useful way, when I start from A, I go from sweet to a little bit tough, to fairly tough, to tough, or bluesy, right? I go from B.B. King to Albert King over here. All right. And then if I want to go to The Martians Are Coming, I can add a couple more to go to the next mode over here, which happens to be Phrygian, but who the Phrygian cares? And then over here, which happens to be Locrian, and that's really like The Martians Are Coming. Okay? And I'll show you how those sound. They're not too bad, but they really go beyond tough to kind of weird or other sounding. Okay? All right. So just so that you know, here is the Phrygian would be playing in F, which is what we just saw, and that would be something like this with an A. Almost sounds Spanish, right? Notice how I'm just landing on that A note, that's all. I mean, that's kind of the point, is that you're playing at a different scale, but you're just landing at the end of the phrases on the notes, which is kind of cool. All right, now let's do one more, and The Martians Are Coming. That's B flat, okay? Okay. And that's all the modes, because the note A doesn't appear in any of the other ones. So that works, and if you go into any other ones, they're sharp. Now, how does it all fit on the guitar? All right, here's the way that I always thought of it. First, the two key things are to go from sweet to tough. You simply back cycle on this guy. That's the first thing. So sweet to tough. Okay, back cycle. D to A is a little bit tough. D going to G is tougher, and then going to C is toughest. Okay? Beyond that, you get weird. All right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the interesting thing to figure out is, on the guitar, whenever you start, think of a couple of bar positions. One is what I call the E bar. So that would be this major. In A, it would be this guy right here. Okay? You're all used to this one, the grand bar across all 6 strings. Okay, it's like an E position, right? You're playing an E chord, but you just kind of bar across. Okay? And that's what you got. Now, the second thing that you need to know is to go from that guy, the next one you go up is the same, in the same position. You do the semi-grand bar, which is kind of like, maybe some people call it the A bar, because you play an A chord up here. I'm barring across on the 2, 3, on the second fret, on the 4, 3, and 2 strings. Okay, so same position, you do that, and that helps you back cycle 1. So 1 back cycle from A would be D. Makes sense? When I go to the next back cycle, you have to drop 2 frets on the position. And there you go. There's the second one, which is G. So that's dropping 2 from A, right? The first one is to go. You guessed it, the next one is C. And that tells you all that you need to know in terms about going from sweet to tough. With that, if you want to continue back cycling, you can go to F and just keep going down. Except the fretboard can't keep going down, so at some point you have to go up to the 12th or the 11th instead of keeping on cycling. Etc. Right? Okay, so in A, one more time, just in A, sweet. Second one is D, right? If we want to get a little bit tough, we go to D. But played in an A over an A chord. So it's a D major scale played A to A. Third one is G. Okay, but played over an A chord, it sounds like this. Okay, and the fourth one is C, but played over an A chord, it sounds like this. And that's it. Well, hopefully you found that useful and helpful. Well, maybe if you'd like to, we can explore more of each of the mode sounds, including the weird ones like the Phrygian and the Locrian. Right? Those are kind of weird sounding things, and they're worth exploring too, but those 4 are really pretty easy and simple to get started on, going from the majory sounding stuff to the bluesy sounding stuff, and it really works. It really does. All right, see you down the road. As always, all comments are welcome. Appreciate it. All right, see ya.